Good morning, everyone. Welcome to TalentBlazer, India's latest platform to provide you all solutions related to UGC NET queries and issues. And I'm your friend and teacher in this journey, and I will be teaching you UGC NET Paper 2, that is Commerce, and the subject code for the same is 08. So, the subject that we are going to talk about is Commerce. So, in today's class, we'll talk about theories of international trade. Till now, we have covered and we have started the unit 1, and in that, we have covered what is business environment. In the second unit, we have started trade and international business. In today's class, we'll discuss theories of international trade. And as I promised you in the last class, we'll discuss and I will reveal the surprise that I was planning. So, do stick to the end and enjoy this video because this is going to be an interesting video. The theories are very crucial and important, and there are so many questions that are being asked in the theories of international trade from the theories of international trade. So, firstly, you should be knowing that okay, what all are the classical country-based theories. So, these are the classical theories: mercantilism, absolute advantage, comparative advantage, hexaholen. So we'll study about each of the theories in detail, but you have to keep in the mind that okay, these all are the classical country-based theories, and these are the modern firm-based theory: country similarity, product life cycle, global strategic rivalry, and Porter's national competitive advantage. But in the modern firm-based theory, we'll do the theories which are very important and crucial for your syllabus, but in classical, every theory is important, right? So we'll cover each theory one by one, and we'll start with theory of mercantilism. So this trade theory prevailed during 16th to 19th century, right? So for studying every theory that trade theory, you need to know at what time that theory came and who has given the theory. There is no such uh, founder for theory of mercantilism. So there is no definite name you have to remember. You have to remember the following. All right, so we're talking about the theory of mercantilism. This theory came during 16th to 19th century, the earliest one. Now, what in this theory? The wealth of the nation is measured based on its accumulated wealth in terms of gold and silver. So your wealth will be measured depending upon how much gold and silver you possess. Next thing, what this theory suggests is this is the most important part. Nations should accumulate wealth by encouraging exports and discouraging imports. So, why? Basically, you export more to other countries and gain, and discourage imports by giving the gold and silver in return. So, you accumulate wealth, right? This is the main agenda of this theory. Theory of mercantilism aims at creating trade surplus and in turn accumulates nation wealth. So basically, when you export more, when you export more, you will create more wealth. In comparison, if you do less of the imports, so you will create wealth. That's what basically this theory means. Now, next up, this is the where you will get a question. Viewed as zero sum game. Which theory is viewed as zero sum game? Theory of mercantilism. Viewed as zero sum game, one in which a gain by one country is in a loss of another, right? So one in which a gain by one country result in a loss of another. So you basically gain by resulting into a loss of another. This is what basically this theory means. This is the theory of mercantilism. Most important thing, that nation should accumulate wealth by encouraging exports and discouraging imports. First, second, viewed as zero sum game. Both of these things are very important in this theory, and you should remember it now because I think I have made myself very much clear upon this. This is theory of mercantilism. Next up, absolute advantage theory. Now, from where you can get the question, who gave this theory? This theory was given by Adam Smith. Which year? 1776. Rest you don't know, need to remember. These two things are very important, right? Given by Adam Smith and in the year 1776. So, what this theory talks about, when one country can produce a unit of good with less cost than another country, the first country has an absolute advantage in production of that. So, basically, When you can produce a good more efficiently, more effectively, in absolute advantage theory, when a nation can produce a good uh, with less of resources compared to other nation, you are in an absolute advantage. So we have taken an example as well. In a hypothetical two country world, if country A could produce a good cheaper or faster than country B, then country A had advantage and could focus on specializing on producing that. So this theory says if you have advantage in producing one particular good, go on doing that. If you can produce it cheaper and faster than compared to other country, right? If you have advantage of climate or any other thing, then you have absolute advantage over the other country in producing that particular good, right? So similarly, if country B was better at producing another good, it could focus on specialization as well. So basically, let's say if India can produce coffee best in the world, they can produce coffee cheaper and faster than any other country in the world, then India should focus on specialization of coffee. This is, I'm just giving a hypothetical example. So this will give you an absolute advantage. His theory stated that a nation wealth shouldn't be judged by how much gold and silver it had, but rather by the living standard of its people. So this theory doesn't focus upon accumulating gold and silver alone. It focuses on your nation wealth will be known or will be seen by the standard of living of the people. Right? This is the absolute advantage theory. Next up, yeah, please do focus upon who gave this theory and in which year. This is very important. You can get a match the following question. Absolute advantage theory, Adam Smith, 7076. You have to match it, right? So very important. And this is, I think, uh, by the term itself, you can know that the country has an absolute advantage in producing that particular good, and they should specialize in that. This is what basically absolute advantage theory is. Now, this is comparative advantage theory. This is where things get tricky. So, firstly, you need to know who gave this theory. Given by David Ricardo in 1817, right? So this was given in 1817 by David Ricardo. So a country has a comparative advantage in producing a good if the opportunity cost of producing that good in terms of other goods is lower in that country compared to other countries, right? Now it gets very tricky. What is the difference between absolute advantage and comparative advantage? This paragraph doesn't explain you well. I can explain this with the help of an example, right? So let's assume that there are two countries and they can produce these two things, either food or fish, if they allocate their full resources. So if Bangladesh allocate their whole resources, they can produce either 100 tons of food or either 100 tons of fish. On the other hand, if India can produce, if allocate their whole resources on food, they can produce 400 tons of food and 200 tons of fish. Now, here's the thing. Which country has the absolute advantage? Which country has the absolute advantage? India in both the cases, right? But there is a caveat here. You know, who has a comparative advantage? For that, you need to look at the opportunity cost, right? So to calculate opportunity cost, if India goes on producing, let's say fish, so they will miss. Sorry, if India goes on producing the food, in that case, 400 divided by two, that will they will miss on the fish by 2 units, and comparatively, right. So firstly, we'll talk about the opportunity cost in case of Bangladesh, right? If you want to calculate the opportunity cost in case of Bangladesh, it will come out to be one, because if you divide 100 by 100, 100 by 100, you will get one, and if you divide 100 by 100, you will still get one. In either of the cases, if you want to produce 1 ton of food, you will have to forgive 1 ton of fishes. But let's say in case of India, if you want to produce fishes, right? So if you produce fishes, 1 ton of fish will be 2 tons of food, and if you produce 1 ton of food, you have to miss out on 0.5 tons of fish. So that's the opportunity cost 0.5, and here will be 2, right? So this here the India, if we talk about the opportunity cost, it will be 2 here, and it will be 0.5 in case of fish. But in both the cases for in Bangladesh, it would be 1 and 1. As I have been saying, 100 divided by 100 will give you 1 in either of the cases. But if India decides to produce more of fishes, like, then they have to forgive. If 1 ton of fish is produced, then you have to forgive 2 tons of food. And if you produce 1 ton of food, you have to forgive 0.5 ton of fishes, right? So if have to compare the opportunity cost, this is two in case of food here. This is one. So India has a specialization comparison in producing the food. And if you look up here, there is 0.5 and this is 1. So in this case, Bangladesh has the the opportunity cost better in case of producing the fish. So India should specialize in has comparative advantage in producing the food, but Bangladesh has comparative advantage in producing the fish. I hope I have made myself clear. I know it's a bit tricky, and you need to go through it once again. And this is the example, I think, that will help you to make it clear. You need to find the opportunity cost first, so you need to divide them. And if you divide 100 by 100, in either of the cases, it will come 1. But if you divide 400 by 200, that it will give you 2, and you divide 200 by 400, it will give you zero point 0.5, right? Then you have to make the comparison, right? Which one has the least opportunity cost, and that is why you're making a comparative advantage. So India has comparative advantage in producing food, whereas Bangladesh has comparative advantage in producing fish. So India should focus upon food and Bangladesh should focus upon fish, and we should export fishes from Bangladesh and focus and allocate all the resources on food alone, and Bangladesh should focus on fish, right? So this is what we can understand with the help of comparative advantage. But if we would have taken absolute advantage alone here, then we would have been saying that India is better in both the cases, because if you do compare absolutely, India is better in producing food and India is better in producing fish as well. But now we are talking about the comparative advantage. You need to know, okay, what is the opportunity cost of producing and which one is lower, right? Then you can select the one, pick the one, and then you need to know that, as in, okay, India has specialization in producing food and Bangladesh has specialization in producing fish. So this is how you need to know about comparative advantage. And I've been saying that comparative advantage theory, not only the example, I think this is because you need to know the clarity. You need to know the clarity about this particular topic. That is why I have taken an example, but you need to know the year in which it came, 1817, and given by whom, right? So this is very important. Comparative advantage theory given by, you can easily get a question of match the following. On the left hand side, you can get absolute advantage, comparative advantage. On the right hand side, the years and the founders will be mentioned. So you have to match the following. That is how the questions are been forming up in past few years. Next up, we'll talk about endowment theory, Huxley-Olin model, and factor proportion theory. So this is known by two other names. So, according to this theory, a nation will export the commodity whose production requires intensive use of nation's relatively abundant and cheap factors, and import the commodity whose production requires intensive use of nation's scarce and expensive factors. So, this is what we have read now. But I'll explain you with an example. India is a labor surplus theory. So, India will export those commodity because in which more it is more labor oriented. If we produce a product which is more labor oriented, it will cost us cheap, right? Because we have abundance of labor. But now we are talking about machinery and more heavy industries. We don't have much, right? We are labor intensive industries, not manufacturing intensive. But China is, US is, and they can produce the manufacturing goods through machines at a cheaper cost. So we should import them. right? We shouldn't be going, okay, we should start producing manufacturing goods uh, through heavy machineries because it will cost us huge and we don't have that amount of money, right? We have intensive labor, so we should be using labor oriented products more. This is what basically this theory means. I think I have made myself very much clear. I'll just repeat it once again. So, according to this theory, a nation will export the commodity whose production requires intensive use of the nation's relative abundant and cheap factors. So, we are talking about India. In this case, we will produce labor oriented products more and we will export them at a expensive price, at a more expensive price, because in US they won't be having labor oriented products because they have all machinery in place, they don't have abundance of labor. Now we have to import the commodity, we have to import the manufacturing products made from heavy industries, right? Heavy industries related products. Now import the commodity whose production requires intensive use of nation's scarce and expensive factors, because heavy machinery is expensive and it's scarce as in they don't have in much abundance. I hope. Thus, a country with an abundance of cheap labor would export labor intensive products, as I have been saying, right? So, thus, a country with an abundance of cheap labor would export labor intensive product and import capital intensive good, and vice versa. So, I think I have made myself very much clear upon this endowment theory, Hexer-Holland model, and factor proportion theory. And it is very simple to understand. If you are good in something, do that rather than trying to actually be good in so many things. Focus upon one thing, do good in that. Okay, so this is what basically this theory says.